you want to move to the left so they can see your slides as well? Perfect.
Alright, perfect. So this is Zero Hero, Kickstarter gaming successes. I'm not going to talk too much about our project, but basically taking lessons from Kickstarters that were basically unknown and managed to build themselves into making hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so I think these will be more illustrative of like how to do it even if you don't know marketing or PR or anything. Is this connected? Can I talk from this side? Yeah. Okay, so like I said, we raised $409,000 for our game, and we messed up a whole lot of things. Like, for example, all our PR launched about 12 hours before our Kickstarter was approved. So yeah, very stressful, a lot of pressure. And the thing to keep in mind if you're ever considering crowdfunding is that it's an extremely stressful experience. For example, there was, like the second weekend, I could not touch a computer because I was just so stressed out. Like, we had it pretty good. There were only like 3 or 4 trolls that were hating on our project, but even then, it's really hard to get stuff done. So just take into consideration, you're going in for the long haul, get prepared, get ready to take it on. All these projects have like the same thing. They're not established game companies. They basically came out of nowhere with no PR company behind them and managed to build a big following. The first one is Banner Saga. So if you can see here, like the art is beautiful. In fact, that was one of their most successful things. Every single PR piece about them talked about how beautiful their art was. And it was these guys that were making their first game. They basically raised $724,000 and it only took them 5 days to fund. There's a couple things that were really good other than the amazing art, was that they were very personal in their writing style. They're like, we want to create the strategy game, we want to make it about plot and story, we want to drive through the audience, and like, because of the way they spoke, you could totally understand that this was a personal project, something they wanted to create and make real, and I funded it, and a lot of other people did, because we just responded to this. So I want to talk a little bit about how to do PR, because I think this is one of the most essential pieces for a crowdfunding campaign. The first one is you always want to reach out to people that raise their hand and say, I like this subject. So look up projects that are similar to what you want to do, find out who wrote about those projects, and then do outreach to those people. So basically send them an email, be like, hey, I'm thinking that this story would be really great. I always would suggest a headline. One thing to keep in mind with bloggers and all these content writers is they write a ton of stuff. So all you have to do is give them a really interesting topic. Like, suggest a headline. Like I said, like, why these old school computer gamers think they're going to make a better game than Persona, which was a very popular indie RPG game. And the site talked about them all the time. So I made a little controversial title that I knew people would debate and say, oh, no, they're not. But that's okay. That's what the websites want. They want people to go to the site. They want them to have comments. They want them to read it. So yeah, just send them a headline. Make it easy for them to write about your story. Give them a bunch of details so that they have enough information to put together their own story. And just be really respectful of their time. Don't always keep your emails concise, clear, and useful to the person that you're talking to. So how important is PR and narrative? This project right here is really fascinating. It's called Steam Bandits. They made a Kickstarter. They were asking for $60,000. They raised $524. You cannot fail more than they failed. They started the project again. This time they raised $55,000. And you can look here, they were still trending to fail. This is from KickTrack, which tells you all the analytics of each Kickstarter project. But you can see that they were trending to sort of fail. But then they released one article on Kotaku, which is a big gaming blog. And it was basically that it just connected with the audience. And the headline was, they were laid off from their game company. Now they want to change the way we play. That is a really compelling headline, and then the entire article was like quotes from them talking about like their past achievements, how they had been sort of like pushed to start this company, and why they thought it mattered. And you can see that story connected with people. That's like $30,000 raised in 2 days. So the second game I want to talk about is Stonehearth. It's a Minecraft-like design. These guys had never made a game before. The nice thing that they had was that they started Evo fighting game tournament, so they had connections. And they basically got those connections to write about them, to talk about them, and that was enough to get interest. But the other thing is that this Minecraft style design is really hot. Minecraft's like one of the most successful games. The creator of Minecraft made like $100 million personally from his game. So this is a very popular subject, and they just did a cool little twist on it. They made it more RPG-like. And their style was very obvious. They were very clear on what they wanted to make and why it would be great, and they showed a lot of what the game would look like. And that was really helpful. So as I mentioned, KickTrack is, if you're thinking of anything in crowdfunding, I recommend always use KickTrack. It basically, it's kicktrack.com, and you can look up any project, and it's going to show you what they did day by day. You can figure out, oh, what did they do that day? Usually the Kickstarters will have updates where they say, oh, these people gave us shout-outs, now we raised all this money. Then you can see, oh, those shout-outs raised like $50,000. I better reach out to that person. So Castle Story is the next one. This one's really interesting. It's also sort of like Minecraft, which is definitely a subject that people really want more of. This one's really cool because these guys are just university graduates. They had no background, no marketing, no business sense. They were just guys that really wanted to make something. They made it inside of school, and they released a YouTube video. And they talk in the video that they had not even checked their YouTube, and then they look a week later, and they had 500,000 views. They freaked out. They were like, oh my God, what just happened? And that was what drove them to realize that they can make a game. And so these guys literally just put up a YouTube video of their game, they showed off what they wanted to build, and they found an audience. And not only did they find an audience, press found that audience and wrote all these stories about them. And that's all they had. They raised $700,000 on the fact of like one YouTube video found an audience, and they just went on that.
You broke it.
Nothing like technology.
There we go.
It's turning again. Yeah, it's really disrupting when it goes back and forth. It looks like it's working again. We good? Okay, perfect. So I want to talk about one thing is that you want to build a community. This is like an essential piece because if you can, when you're starting to think about your crowdfunding, you want to just set up like a Facebook page, a Twitter page. You just want people that get really interested about it when you're like reaching out to communities to have a place where they can just see all your updates before you launch. That way, like, I mean, you have to put so much work into preparation for a crowdfunding campaign anyway. You're doing all this stuff, you're putting together all the writing, you're looking up other projects, you're finding out who wrote about it before. You have a ton of stuff that you can just put up on a Facebook page that you have anyway. It's not too much work, but the advantage of it is that it's really easy for people to share off Facebook and Twitter. So it's not really about Facebook itself, it's that it's so easy for them to share with their friends, who share with their friends, who share with their friends. So in our case, it made up 8.24% of our total pledges, which is pretty big for the fact it's only 900 people and a project that raised $409,000. So just set it up, put all your information that you're doing anyway up there, just so people can see what's happening and they can feel a sense of togetherness. One of the really successful projects, Planetary Annihilation, raised like $2 million. They were nice enough to show how they got their money from every single source. And you can see that still Facebook made up 3.5% with $25,000. Twitter made about $40,000. Just make it easy for people to share it, because basically these are people that share it with their friends, and their friends click on that link, go to Kickstarter, pledge money to you, just do it. Next one I want to talk about is 7 Days to Die. This is a more recent project. They focus a lot on this open world thing that's very popular right now. They also use the YouTube method to drive about 330,000 views before they started their project, and I was just showing what their game looked like before they did it. And just like just like the other project, the YouTube videos drove a lot of press mentions. It got a lot of interest, And the other really interesting thing about this, which if you're in the gaming industry at all, you need to know about, is how important YouTube is for any sort of PC project. Two YouTubers basically talked about the project, and these guys all have like millions of subscribers. They drove 800,000 views between the two of them with 2 videos, and that raised like $40,000 just from the 2 of them. And they raised like $400,000 the day before. So reach out to YouTubers, get that audience. Those guys have like the most loyal followings, and those people will throw money down for you. Keep in mind with Kickstarter that it's U-shaped. Basically, you get a lot of money when people get really excited at the beginning, and then it drops off as everyone's unsure in the middle. And that's where all your tears go, as you cry and wonder why you even started. But at the end, all these people that were like, all right, the project sounds cool, I like what you're doing, but I don't really want to throw my money in. They're on the fence, but when it gets towards the end and they realize, oh, this won't fund without me, they'll throw their money in too. Which is why you're always going to have a lot of money at the beginning, a lot of money at the end, and not very much money in the middle. A couple things about not messing it up. First off, don't write your crowdfunding descriptions with the idea with a sense of entitlement, like people should give you money. People shouldn't give you money, they want to give you money. Some of these projects have done this, and they fail really badly. No matter how much press they throw in, what they do, they'll get a lot of money at the very beginning from like the people that get really excited, and then no one else ever gives them any money, because they have a sense of entitlement about it. Always launch your project between Monday and Wednesday. The reason for that is basically press cycles. So a lot of your press is actually not going to come from the person that wrote about you. It's going to come from people that read that article and then wrote their version for their blog or their website. So just make sure that you always are launching in the early beginning of the week so that other people have time to write about it. If you hit a weekend, no one's going to write about you. They're all taking their breaks, and you're not a story anymore by the next week. This is something to keep in mind. Kickstarter needs to give you final approval. Make sure you have it before you are scheduled to bring your project live. We messed this up by 12 hours, and yeah, that was extremely, extremely stressful. And keep in mind with any crowdfunding that physical goods are very expensive. The more projects that you can, or the more offers you can give, the tiers that don't involve sending something, the better you're going to be. Because some projects will just eat up all of their profits, sending away all this stuff, because shipping is expensive. And I was just seeing a recent board gaming project that's raised like $2 million just this month. They've started saying, they state that international customers pay actual shipping costs. You'll avoid so much stress by making them pay for shipping rather than trying to calculate that out yourself. Here's a project that just finished, and very successfully. They raised $645,000, and this is, I think it just ended 2 days ago. The video itself doesn't have anyone talking at all. It just shows the video. The design was very clear. They're like Zelda plus Diablo with a Miyazaki-style world. The video, like the style of the art is really striking and beautiful, but it's not like, it doesn't require a master artist. It just was well designed and well thought out. And I looked through all the PR that wrote about him. Like no one wrote about him when he launched his project. He said that, I actually reached out to him, he said that the way people learned about him was he reached out to his network of friends, like other designers. He had started his own co-working space for gaming in LA, so he had a lot of designer friends, but he had no PR experience. But he just built this organic outreach, and when all you need is for people to be aware that you exist, and then you just gotta sell on why your idea is great. You don't even need PR as long as you can get enough people to recognize you and talk about you and share your project with friends. Kickstarter still works. Here's the gaming projects by date of the top 100 most funded projects. So you can see about 2012, it was definitely beating the trend line, and now it's a little bit below, but it's still going up pretty rapidly. Like the opportunity is not washed up. There's still plenty of projects that make a ton of money and are still very successful. A couple things to keep in mind as wrapping up for Kickstarter tips. Reputation. Reputation is extremely valuable because pledgers just need to know that you'll actually create this game or you'll create this product. And if you don't have that, you need to have in-game footage. You need to have a physical product. You need to prove that you can actually create what you're saying you create. That's one of the most essential pieces for getting a good funding. Familiarity. People have to understand what you're doing. Don't go really crazy unless you're saying you're going crazy like something that's already been made that was crazy. Clarity. Just be very clear on what you're creating, why it matters, why you're passionate about it. Style, this was really true for any of these gaming things, is that they all had very striking styles. You saw it once, you recognize what it looks like, and that really gets pledgers excited. Niche, keep in mind, crowdfunding is usually not for general audiences, especially with gaming. It tends to be a more hardcore audience. Most social games fail unless they tell a really good story, like Steam Bandits did that I showed earlier. They explained why their game mattered, and they still succeeded despite being a casual game. Respect, make sure that you're not asking it like you're entitled. Planning, you want to do as much as possible ahead of time. You don't know what you're going to be like once you start the project and you're tearing out your hair and you're crying a lot. You want to make sure that a lot of the stuff is done so you can just push it out and yeah, spend all your time worrying. And delivery, make sure that you're delivering the product with your tiers. Kickstarters that don't give any sort of reward for it usually fail. And have an awesome day. Feel free to reach out to me for a quick list of crowdfunding tips, the list of what successful projects there are by category, more details on how to do crowdfunding and marketing, and I can give you agency recommendations for people that can help tell your story for you or help get the story across. Adorable Corgi, questions?
Yeah, that graph you showed where you showed how Kickstarter was going like this, was that in comparison to other sites that do the same type of work that Kickstarter does?
No, so that was basically...
Because every time I turn around, there's another crowdfunding mechanism out there.
Yeah. In terms of crowdfunding where it's reward-based, like Kickstarter, most of them are not, none of them are as big a deal as Kickstarter. Kickstarter is number one for that. So what that was showing you was basically, of the top 100 most funded projects, when did they happen date-wise?
Kickstarter?
In Kickstarter itself, for gaming, only the gaming category. But I did it for all of the different categories and it's still the same thing. Last year was hotter than this year, but there's still a continuing amount of projects raising 500 or 100 or $1 million or whatever amount of money. So there's still plenty of successful projects.
So is Kickstarter the eBay of this space?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
Yeah?
Do you think it's worth it to hire a PR firm or marketing company to help you promote your Kickstarter?
If you could repeat the question.
Do you think it's worth it to hire a PR firm or a marketing company to help you promote your Kickstarter?
So that's a tough question. There's a few pieces to that. The good thing about hiring a PR firm is basically you just have them reaching out to more people. They have their connections. I did all of our PR purely cold, where I was just emailing writers and selling, here's a great headline, here's what I think the headline should be, here's what the Kickstarter is about. If you need more information, here's some links to it. So I was doing it purely cold and that worked fine. A lot of PR companies will actually tell you that usually PR responds best to the founder anyway of any startup, not just crowdfunding. So you still should be involved for like the biggest ones anyway. The real advantage of PR is just that they're reaching out to more people than you have time for. But I would say generally no, but just, yeah, reach out to someone who will help you do it.
Thanks.
Yep.
I noticed as you were going through the examples, you mentioned the one, well, these were all successes.
Mm-hmm.
But it seemed to me that some of them missed opportunities to do something. Can you critique any of them and say, if they'd done this, they probably would have done a whole lot better? Are there any that come to mind which succeeded almost despite the fact that they were kind of an incomplete campaign?
Yeah, so for all these projects I was talking about, the reason I chose them is, so basically the question was, can I critique the campaigns that already happened? And the thing with all these ones is they had no real PR outreach. These were purely organic campaigns. I thought they were a really good example because of that they grew out despite the fact that no one wrote about them without finding them first. You'd be much better off reaching out to press sources yourself, making sure that they're aware of you before you start and not relying on people to find you first. That'll happen, but you need to make sure that you get that initial burst of awareness. And these ones basically had either communities or they just created something beforehand so they had stuff to show that built out the awareness, but they didn't do it themselves, and that's always kind of risky. Yes?
Yeah, I had a question on, can you give us some numbers on what a PR agency would charge you to come out, with Kickstarter campaign? And like, what do they go through? Do they timeline it all out for you? What kind of services do they offer?
So I haven't looked into APR, I did all the PR myself. The one that I know is there's a PR company that did Goldie Blocks, which was a great, basically toys for little girl engineers, where it was basically teaching them how to do it. And the way they charge is $1,000 and like 3% of the amount you make. So they're great. I don't know how much other companies are paying. I think that they're very cheap relatively, but I can definitely give you a recommendation.
What's the name of that company?
Mark Point.
Yeah, going along with that, one of the things that I've personally noticed, and I'm sure a lot of people have too, is that the Kickstarters with really good filming, really good editing, and music, and all of the things that make the video part really good, that usually gets a lot more traction than, say, if I did it myself. So how much, if you were hiring somebody to do that, how much do you think that would be worth it, like cost benefit?
Can I ask what are you thinking of for like a crowdfunding campaign?
For instance, a crowdfunding that happened that had really good filming was the Goldie Blocks. That had really good filming, great story, had celebrities in the gaming world in it. The Oculus Rift had all the biggest names in gaming in it and had really good filming, and it seems like that filming part wasn't done by the individuals building it, but probably someone else.
A lot of them had basically found a friend who did filming that was professional, so they were lucky in that way. Hyperlight Drifter, which was the last one I showed that raised $650,000, they showed purely in-game footage with music, which anyone could do because you can just record on your computer. So they had no professional behind it. And in our case with Hero U, we had a terrible video, and we still had like 25% of the people pledging. Because, I mean, by the time they watch your video, they've read through a little bit, they've glanced through stuff, like you can still sell them whether they love your video or not. I would obviously always recommend having a very professional, high quality video, but you can survive without it.
Okay.
On that very first game company that you showed, I think the two of them were from Bioware.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how much do you think that reputation that came from being from Bioware had an effect on the success of their? Okay.
So I think that the thing that they worked for Bioware was nice in that people thought that they could create a game, which is very valuable, but no one knew who their names were. They were not famous people at Bioware. So I think it was more that they did a really good job with their project, and they had a very clear voice of what they wanted to create, and they had the most gorgeous art ever made. But
did they go out of their way to show that they came from Bioware, or would you even have known in the Kickstarter campaign?
I don't think so. I think that they don't mention. I mean, if you clicked on like the little profile, I think it mentioned Bioware, and then if you got to the very end of the Kickstarter page, it might have mentioned Bioware. I'm sure they mention it in the video after a while, but it wasn't like the description or something. It was just a way for people to feel validated that they would actually be able to succeed. Yes, in the back?
Yeah, I'm kind of new to this in terms of the rewards policies, but I got the impression that you put money in and you get money back, or is it that you just put money in and you get software? How does the reward process work? Is it like a VC model where you get your money back after a year or whatever?
So that's a new thing that's coming, but these are all Kickstarter and Indiegogo, which are the two big ones in this space, are reward-based crowdfunding. So what that means is that the backers are only getting some sort of reward benefits, and like if you give $1,000, you get these 10 things. If you give $10,000, you get these 15 things. So it's purely reward-based for these two kinds of crowdfunding. There's a whole new side that's all about equity funding. The Jobs Act is making it much easier to happen, but right now, these reward-based crowdfunding platforms are doing amazing.
What's your troll strategy?
What's your what strategy?
Trolls.
What's your strategy for dealing with trolls?
Oh, yeah, grow a thicker. So
Grow
the
thicker
strategy
skin.
for dealing with trolls is slowly develop a thicker skin and suffer a lot. You can talk with them. You can be like, "Hey, man, we're just trying to create this," and like you can quiet them, but it doesn't help you. Like, even if you make them silent because you convince them that they should bother someone else, like, the words still sting and you just have to deal with it and get over it. Like, it doesn't matter, you can't get over that, you just have to deal with it.
They don't like negatively affect your campaign.
No, actually, in some ways they help you because other people will come up and support you. If you have backers already, they're gonna support you because, I mean, they threw their money, they believe in you. They'll usually respond to them, so really what a troll does is it hurts you on the inside, but it's not gonna affect your project.
It's kind of like what Madonna said, any publicity is good publicity, even bad publicity.
As long as you can continue going. Yes. Any other questions? Yes?
What about trolls? Can they greenmail you? I mean, can they literally, you know, in some way try to shake you down to try to affect your project in some negative way, like if it's a competitor or something like that?
I mean, it's possible. We didn't have that issue at all. The ones that I've seen that's like the big trolls is like lawyer trolls after the fact. There's a kind of a sad one about this designer who had this great idea for like a laptop stand. And he realized he spent all the money, he couldn't make it the way he thought it was, and he worked really hard, he couldn't do it. And like this guy who had thrown like $10 in it was like, where's my $10? And he like started this huge lawsuit campaign. There's no grounding for that, but the only kind of troll you have to really worry about is the lawyer type. Any other questions?
Awesome. Well, thank you, Michael.
Awesome, thanks everyone.